The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised. That means peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum. Well, Bismillah is in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I'm kind of excited, although you don't see me jumping up and down. But Assalamu alaikum, and that's peace be unto you. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad. Welcome to Liberated Sisters right here at Morris Media Studios. Buckle up. We have a great show for you today. The topic is Who's Xmas? Who's Xmas? Coming right out of the Final Call newspaper. Today we're going to hear from historian, lecturer, author, Dr. Ashra Kwesi of Kemet New. That's Black People's Productions. We're going to talk about the African origin of European holidays. And we're going to also have before that the Farrakhan Factor, wherein we will hear from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Luther King Jr., on the economic boycott, the call for economic boycott of ending during the Christmas season, and following up the Honorable Louis Farrakhan on veganism and what's up with this Christmas. But first, the Justice Report. Today's Justice Report out of the Final Call newspaper, finalcall.com. The cover story is on impeachment, Trump, politics, and impeachment. This is written by our great senior editor, Brother Askia Muhammad. Brother Askia writes about the acrimony, animosity, and growing anger, the impeachment, picking sides, and dividing America. This is coming out of the House Judiciary Committee's vote to approve articles in impeachment against President Donald Trump after a bitter committee debate that stretched over 3 years. That is our cover story for the Final Call newspaper. There's much, much more in the Final Call, including the reparations debate. Brother, let me get this. I want to make sure you have it right. But in the meantime, finalcall.com. The reparations debate wages on. Brother Ture Muhammad, contributing writer, writes about Evanston's reparations initiative, which called for a historic move for a small Illinois town. I'm looking at the article with Dr. Ron Daniels. We have activist, philanthropist, and actor Danny Gurr, and more there. So that's our second lead-in the national edition of the Final Call newspaper. You can subscribe to the digital edition at finalcall.com. That is our mini Justice Report today, because now we're going to have the Farrakhan Factor.
Was told to deliver this message. You think you're invincible because you got money, bombs, guns, and planes, killing babies, innocent people. I think you're insane. Chaos and destruction is the name of your game. Somebody's got to stop you before the whole world goes up in flames. So he told me to tell you, I'll fight for my brothers.
Yeah, we're fighting with an economic boycott this Christmas season. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has lifted and spread the desire of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to seek justice through economic boycott. And so these two men are on the same page. We brought that from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan during the run-up to the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. That's 10-10-15, justice or else. Many people were afraid of what the or else was, and the minister said, well, ultimately, God is the or else, and he's warned us to watch the weather. Like, God will affect the justice, but there's something that we can do, and that is to hold our dollars and not spend with those who continue to beat, vilify, just mob us down in the street. And so here is Dr. Luther King Jr. and following him, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan more.
Individually, we are poor when you compare us with white society in America. We are poor. Collectively, we are richer than all the nations in the world with the exception of 9. That's power right there if we know how to prove it. We began the process of building a great economic base, and at the same time we are putting pressure where it really hurts. We don't have to argue with anybody. We just need to go around these stores and to these massive industries in our country. Say, God send us here. Say to you that you're not treating his children right. We come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda bad treatment where God's children are concerned. If you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. We mean business now, and we are determined to gain rightful place in God's world.
When you take your Bible, look at the 10th chapter of Jeremiah, and know that going out in the forest, cutting down a tree, bringing it home, decking it with silver and gold, that's what the heathens do. You don't need no Christmas tree in your house. That's pagan practice. Leave the tree. Oh, come on, Farrakhan. Leave the tree. Leave the lights. Because you're in the end of the month. Santa ain't paying your electric bill.
Santa's doing nothing, I tell you. So look, that's the Honorable Minister Farrakhan talking about the mechanism of cutting down the tree and that can get with silver and gold. And this is coming up with Jesus Santa campaign. In a minute, we're going to be speaking with the great historian, Dr. Ashra Kwesi. But before him, we're going to hear from the one that he learned from among many others, Dr. Chakamusa Barashang, who is the author of African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. I want to read a little bit about you, our cover story last week in the final call, Who's Christmas? Up with Jesus, Down with Santa. We wrote this cover story because right now, again, our people are spending a lot. Depression is high, alcoholism, drug use, a lot of different things that are against our best interests are going to be at an all-time high in the name of mythical character, Santa Claus. And so I'm going to read a little bit about the cover story, and then we're going to go right into Dr. Shango, and then we'll come with Dr. Kwesi. And hopefully you'll call in and speak to him. I would like it to be a call show. I think I need to get the calls going so you can do that. But Up with Jesus, Down with Santa, what's Christmas all about? We came right out of the gate with the teaching, the words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us this. This is out of our Savior has arrived. So I begin by saying that identity theft is legal, but Santa Claus is co-opt Jesus with impunity. Across the world, people are to celebrate. You're planning to celebrate perhaps December 20th or Christmas Day, the Son of God's birth. But what people will be doing is actually the opposite. This is a quote from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in Our Savior Has Arrived. Jesus was not born in December. God, in the person of Master Fathered Muhammad, whom praises are due forever, has taught me that his birthday took place between the first and second weeks of September, and that no one knows exactly what day he was born, for it was a secret kept between Joseph and Mary to save both from being murdered by a baby out of wedlock. stated the Honorable Muhammad in his 1974 book, Savior Has Arrived. He offered a deeper understanding of teacher, the great Mahdi, Muhammad, and insight and prophecies of the world. And so the hard truth about Jesus, that he says that our Christian brothers and sisters do not want to accept. And that is the real truth that the Christians hate to confess. This is a quote, is that Joseph had the child Jesus buried while he was married to a woman, and at that time had 6 children by his first marriage. So Master Father Muhammad, God in person, taught me. This is from the Honorable Muhammad. So the 25th of December is the birthday of Nimrod, the evil demon of the white race who was born in the last 300 years of the around the 17th century BC. Continued the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Dr. Ashra Kwesi will take us further into that. But when people say, being a Nimrod, wouldn't want to be called a Nimrod. He's a wicked person, and he broke the civilization. And so the historians will get further into that. I want to lay a little base about the article and why we're doing the show today. And so now let's hear from Professor Ashaka Musa Barshan.
And then the real, and I ain't letting you all hook on that. We do it for the children. We're going to get there about that you help get back. All right? 5, most of the European holidays were predicated on their fears. Halloween is the fear of the devil and their dead ancestors. I'm going to talk about this as I go now. Columbus Day, they were fearing the end of the world, so they were going around the world trying to conquer everything and everybody and get everything they could before the end of the world came. That was the state of the mind that these folk took with them. That's why they were so cruel and mean to everybody. Thanksgiving Day, they were afraid of starving themselves to death. And the red man made a big mistake. We'll talk about that in a minute. Stop calling people Indians and then stop. They're not. The indigenous red man, or red blood. And Xmas was fear of the devil and the imps getting them on Christmas Eve night. I hope we get a chance to talk about that. But it's on the table. And Easter was the fear of sin and its punishment by eternal damnation. And the 4th of July was the fear of the loss of control of their black slaves in the slavery. Now let's move on. Y'all ready? Y'all with me? Now I might have to do a little reading here just to keep us off in line and not get off track.
Do what you got.
Let's deal with the first one now, which is Columbus Day, an orgy of death and destruction. First of all, let me tell you that this man, this Jew from Genoa, Cristobal Colon, was a criminal. Let's get that established. A criminal. That's what he was. He carried a real crime gene to this country with him. He's one of the most despicable characters that have ever lived on the face of this earth, and he opened the way for the transatlantic slave trade. The hell am I going to celebrate him for? Why am I going to teach my children to celebrate him? He should not be viewed as a hero by our children. And you walk up in the school, any of these schools that you tell your children this, that you have to pay taxes for the support of that school. I think you have to do that in Maryland like you do in Pennsylvania. Where else? If you don't have children in school, you still got to pay taxes to the school. They're working for me because you're taking my money before I see my money. So this is what you teach my children, and this is what you don't teach my children, and especially in a predominantly African community. I don't want no risk of being taught to my children as a hero. But it's in the textbook, then you need to get another. I offer you Dr. Ivan Benson. A host of other scholars whose work is far more credible. But you are not going to teach this to my child, and my child is not going to celebrate any Columbus Day. And you go to school on the first day when you get that stuff settled. Y'all scared of the school? No. You must remember, they work for you. Now say to yourself, they work for me. They work for me. I'm the boss. So I tell them what I want my children to know and not. That's what you are as the parent. Oh, they're trying to issue. The school boy at the school. We have to vote your butt in there. So we the boss. You take our money for this, we boss. My child does not salute the American flag. Huh? And they will make children who didn't salute the American flag stand outside of the classroom. I say, you do that one more time, I'm going to go off and taking your butt to butt, and I'm suing the hell out of you. Because you are working against their, whatever amendment right that is, they have the right to make the choice here. And do you dudes in this class salute a swastika? So how you going to make me salute a flag that represents a country that enslaved and murdered my people and was legal to do it? For hundreds of years here, for almost 200 years it was legal to do it. Even after banishment was still legal in the South and other places. They heap this horror on us, and they can still find ways to do it. So I'm going to salute something that represents my structure. Y'all still with me? Y'all ain't ready to get me out of here yet? Let's see if I can show up behind some more of them. In spite of this fact, the textbooks in the country, in spite of the fact that Christopher Cologne is a criminal, portrays criminal, honorable man, and they emulate his holiday annually on October 12th, or the nearest Monday now. They've started doing that. Shows that actually money is more important than anything else. Actually, Europeans didn't feel that strongly about Christopher Cologne. They didn't really start celebrating it as a holiday until 3 years after the fact, in October 1792. It's when it happened. But 500 years ago, this invasion of the Western paradise, as we call it, was not called America and should not called America. That was an invasion. It wasn't a discovery. It was a criminal invasion on a people, because since they landed, the people had been subject to destruction. And you know what happened to us after they got rid of them. You still here?
Yes, sir.
In 1492, we mentioned, Christopher Cologne opened the transatlantic slave trade. He had been in the slaving business since he was 14 years old. The first voyage made along the west coast of Mother Africa land, misnomer Africa, was to get slaves to take back to Spain and Portugal to sell them, to get captives, because when they were slaves, we were captives. So he started his career at the tender age of 14 doing this. So this was a regular way of life for him, this man that you celebrate on Numbers Day. And he took 10 Taino, or noble, indigenous people here, and forcibly took them back with him on his return voyage to Spain. This is the first, quote-unquote, slaves he took from this country. Then Admiral Cristobal Colon instituted a reign of terror. As governor of the island of Hispaniola, became the first South American dictator. It was Cristobal Colon. I want you to remember him that way. In 1493, in response to the fact that most of 1,500 indigenous people he had hunted down and rounded up and sent to Spain to be sold as chattel slavery in the marketplace, they died on the way, thus making his voyage unprofitable. And so he wrote to the King and Queen of Spain. He said, let us, this is in the diary of Cristobal Colon, he said, let us, in the name of the Holy Trinity, go on sending all of this. This is in the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost. It's written, he wrote it. Let us go on sending all the slaves that can be sold. Then he added, they are so timid and nice. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all, reduce them to servitude, and make them do whatever we want them. In my book, African People and European Holidays of Mental Genocide, book page 32, I quote him here. He says, I've traveled many places in the world. I've seen many people in many conditions. He says, but these people here are so tractable, so peaceful are these people, that I swear to your majesties, there is not in the world of the nation. They love their neighbors as themselves. So what did they need with his idea of God? They were all living that. So what they needed was it. They loved their neighbors as themselves. Their discourse was sweet and gentle and accompanied with a smile. And though it is true that they're naked, and Europeans, for anybody that didn't cover their head from head to toe, was naked. Because they had problems with their body, and when you look at it, you can understand why. And Dr. Wilson's very happy and said, as to why. And the ISIS papers. The one thing that they envy you of is your color. And then turn around and they think you ugly while they still out there risking skin cancer trying to look like you. This is insanity. Believe me. And you try to make yourself bleach it off, fry it out, whatever. Let me look at white as I can. Let me leave that to the sisters if you don't ram me out of here. Some brothers who, Jerry Curl and things, but I love you anyhow. We got talk eight though. We ain't fooling around. We ain't fooling around. You don't want to do this, go ahead. Keep your head up that white man's behind. Perish with him. I want these babies to survive and to be victorious. I know a lot of y'all ain't no talking to them. It's all right. I'm gonna come out of this victorious. Dead or alive, I want victorious. I can't take it no more. This cannot go on any longer. You see it about to fall apart all around you. And you keep following up behind this. Blind leading blind. They love their neighbors as themselves, and their discourses are sweet, gentle, and accompanied with a smile. And though it is true they are naked, yet their manners are decorous and praiseworthy. And then he goes on to recommend that these friendly and hospitable people be made to work and sew and do all that necessary to adopt our babies. Folks ain't happy unless they making folks what they want them to do. That's not a man. Stop calling him man. Stop calling him the man. The man. You the man, the man. You the woman, sister lady. Stop calling him the man and the Miss Ann. They have children. An unruly child wants to make everybody do its will. An adult doesn't act that way. So you're dealing with a child calling it a man. No wonder you can't come out of childhood state. No, still laughing, thinking you get out and playing it all the time. In that same year, Columbus also escalated the payment of heavy taxes and imposed upon every man, woman, child over 14 years of age. He issued an ultimatum compelling them to bring him 1 ounce of gold dust every 3 months or to have their hands chopped off. Upon witnessing this punishment, a lot of the people said, hey, I can't get no ounce of gold every 3 months. And I've seen my neighbors who couldn't get their hands chopped off. I'm signing up. I'm flipping. I'm getting enough out here. So they went up to the mountains. What did they do? Columbus took troops with Irish wolfhounds. And one of the things sold in the marketplace of the 7th Isabella on the island of Hispaniola for a high price was the flesh of the indigenous red man. And it was sold as food for the dogs so that the dog would get an appetite for human fish. And took those dogs up in those hills and they hunted those people down. Those who were not fortunate enough to get away, they would split their stomach open with Toledo steel blades, chop them up and feed to the dogs. These people ain't have nothing to celebrate about his coming. Nothing at all. And neither do you have. First of all, I don't want to be identified with that. The one thing that I teach, if you don't learn anything else, that the law of karma is an immutable law. And what's out there, what goes around, comes around. White man, get his. I don't be identified with that. I want the Lord to be able to clearly distinguish. I ain't have nothing to do with it. I ain't in that. What me, Lord? I was a victim. And for a victim. Also, during that same year, Columbus went to surrounding villages demanding that the chiefs turn over the young women and the young boys to become sex slaves for his crew. I want you to think about that. I want you to understand. I may not get to it all tonight. What I'm share with you, I'm share with you. You're talking about a people who had been on a ship, and these ships were floating cesspools. There was feces and urine all over the ship. There was maggots and flies all over the ship. They had washed in over. It took 60 days to make the trip. They had lice all on them. They had all kind of diseases, and here they were dumping in somebody's womb. That had to be hard. People of color around the world were known for their bathing, especially African people. They were the cleanest people on this earth. That must have been a horrible thing to have this nasty, slimy, nothing creature up on top of you. And that's the one thing they wanted to do. Jump on somebody's woman. I don't understand black woman ever going with a white man or black men ever going with a white woman. Love, no color. Shut up. You don't know love. Because you first got to love yourself. But you can love everybody else. If you love yourself, you are not going to go with the descendant of your enemy. You're not going to do that. Plus, you break down your own energy power within you. And black is, I guess, indeed. Check the people. You don't know nothing about science. You don't know science about it. Why we are this color and they are not. And that all they can do is take energy from your cosmic battery and not give it. So you wonder why when you get hooked up with them, you get cancer and all kind of stuff.
Dr. Ashra Kwesi is on the phone with us now. We want to have him to speak to us about one of his teachers, Dr. Ishaka Musa, and speaking about the African origins of the European holidays. And we'd like for you to call in 323-293-3375. Dr. Kwesi, Assalamu alaikum. I'm doing very good, Dr. Kwesi. Thank you so much for joining us today. and taking time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for being one of the voices in the Call newspaper, along with some of our other greats, to talk about the reality of not just Christmas, but the reality of these holidays that we celebrate and how they are rooted in paganism, and how they are against our best interests. So I'm not sure if you got to hear a little bit of what we were playing from Professor Shaka Musa, but one thing's for sure, you are very well versed in what he's teaching because you're a student of it as well. So, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, my sister. Yes, well, we are in the matrix of supremacy.
The matrix.
So when I look at the matrix of white supremacy, I did the analogy of an insect flying through a spider web, actually getting caught in the spider web. The spider doesn't eat him, the insect. He watches him struggle. And when the insect is all wrapped up, that's when the insect goes and sucks the insides out of the insect that flew inside of his spider web. So, in effect, that's what these holidays are to us. We are being wrapped up, we're being sucked out economically, spiritually, culturally, historically, every means that we see that these holidays, when they come about, it's a European holiday. It's dealing with white nationalism. It's holidays that the Europeans brought over here. And worst of all, is all about the celebration of their culture, their paganism, customs, and things that came out of their culture. It has nothing to do with us as an African people. So, of course, this is the epitome, as I refer to, as white supremacy. And, of course, many of these stories that we see, like the virgin birth story, these are stories that African people, these are stories that goes back thousands of years with African people, and I have to acknowledge my teacher named Dr. Yosef Benyakanen, that we affectionately know as Dr. Ben, who I spent 14 years apprenticeship under him, and now 39 years returning back to Africa to validate on the books in stone that I refer to as where many of these concepts came from, but yet corrupted, and then turned into white idolatry, or the formulation of the worship of European white images. So when we look at this time of the year, of the winter solstice, it's the ancient Kemetic, or is referred to now by the Greeks as the Egyptians. This goes back to what they call the Ka-mes. And it's on the temples, the Ka. It means the spirit, the two arms up, and mes meant birth. And it meant a spiritual birth. And that spiritual birth was personified in the world's first holy birth and virgin birth of the goddess Aset, giving birth to her son Heru, who was born on December the 25th. But that representation was not represented as an individual, but represented that we all represent a spiritual birth. It all goes back to the Ka, or Ka-mes, or meaning, as I said, spiritual birth, that was corrupted by the Romans that became Christmas. And then later it was referred to as the Christ. But unfortunately, we have not known that the fact that the whole process of mummification process in Egypt, that was the process that was done for the spiritual body called the Ka, that later became the Gnostics called the Charis, that the Romans called the Christ. Okay, this would be the spiritual resurrection that the Romans and still the Western world and the Western version of Christianity still does not understand to this very day. They took it literally as a physical birth when it was a spiritual birth. So, of course, when we see all the trimmings and everything and all the images that's associated with Christmas, a lot of this is coming out of the paganism of the Europeans. When we look at the Germans, for instance, and we see that all of nature in Germany became barren. So, Germany still is a place full of forest, and during the time of the Germanic tribes, there was a lot more forest. So their god Thor, they bowed down and worshipped Thor, and the symbol for Thor was the pine tree, and that was the tree that they bowed down to worship Thor. By the way, Thursday is named after Thor, by the way, and in fact, the father is Woden, which is Wednesday, and Friday is Freya, the mother. So we see in the very days of the week represents the Germanic tribes. And let's not forget Monday for Moon's Day, and also Tuesday for Tua. And Saturday is Saturnalia, which in fact was another Roman pagan god that they worshipped that was born at December the 25th. So again, the Germans bowed down and worshiped that tree, and they brought that tree when the Germans migrated here to America, immigrated here. They brought that tree with them, and that was the tree that we see in the custom today. The Germans brought that tree here in the 1800s to America. So that became part of the whole ritual and symbol of Christmas is the pine tree. So, of course, symbolically, you still have to bow down to Thor. By bowing down and getting your gift, you must bow down and get your gift from under the tree. So you're bowing down to Thor. And we see reference to some of this. We use the scriptures. For instance, in Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2 and 6, it speaks of that, thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen. First of all, heathen is a German word. It means a heath dweller, meaning uncivilized. That's how the Romans looked at the Germans, okay? The Germanias, they refer to it as. And they go on to say in the scriptures that for the custom of the people are in vain, for they one cut of the tree out of the forest and the axe, and they deck it with silver and gold. So this becomes part of the tradition of what we see in Christmas, even to this very day.
Wow. And can you talk about this Nimrod, whose birthday is actually celebrated on that day? So teaches the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Well, again, this becomes of when we go and look at the customs of those who were looked at in the culture of Mesopotamia and so forth. They refer to as their kings or whoever ruled at that time or whoever was actually deified, okay? And it's through the deification, Nimrod would be looked at as one born at December the 25th. But the one has to question, why is this date always referenced? Why December the 25th? Why not another date, another month of the year?
Right.
Because it's all around the winter solstice. And that's what we are in right now, the winter solstice. And as we come into the winter solstice, we see that the sun goes down into December the 25th. Symbolically, the sun is born at that time of the year. He was born at December. Those were personified. Okay, goes back to the story of whether we're looking at the story of Nimrod, but this eruption, okay, that means that early understanding of December the 25th goes into ancient African history, going back thousands. And so when we talk about these things, we're really turning about the pages of time. And we have to understand the spiritual reference of how this came about, as I refer to as Richard King, an African origin biologicatry, an African ancestor genetic memory bank, okay, so to say, as I'm speaking.
Wow.
So December the 25th, always personified. And the question, why, again? Well, look at the month of September. That's the sun in the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. Well, as the sun continues to descend down into the winter solstice, you had to turn your clocks back. It's darker now. Well, symbolically, they saw that the sun was born of a virgin. Okay. Then at December the 25th, this sun was born again. How they could tell? Because the brightest star this is still a cosmic event. This is not something that went away. They observed this in the universe. I go out in my backyard and observe this event, and seeing this star that in ancient Egypt, that the Greeks referred to it as, that in ancient Kemet, as our ancestors called it Kemet, it means black. They called that star Sebosipta, and the Romans called it Ceres, and the Greeks called it Sothis. Later on, as Christianity developed, that is the reference of that star. At December the 25th, one can go out and look at that star, and then east of that star, you will see a constellation, and that constellation is Orion. And there are 3 stars in Orion's belt. It points directly to that star. So Europeans took the Yuletide, or meaning the birth of the sun. That's literally what the Yuletide means, birth of the sun. Literally, when you look at the Magi, referred to as the 3 wise men, that is actually the 3 stars in Orion's belt. When one looks at the pictures and the images and representation, you're actually looking at a cosmic event symbolic of European images. So literally, we got caught into white idolatry when in fact it was a cosmological event. So the question one has to ask, why do we always see the sun behind Mary's head?
Wow.
Because that's the sun in the constellation of Virgo. Why do you always see the sun behind the European image of the European Jesus head as a baby on December the 25th? Because that's the sun born at December the 25th. Why is a star always up above him? Because that is the star Sibosipta. Why do you see the three wise men? Okay, because that is the constellation of Orion. Okay, that points to that star that gave an indication that the sun would be born. So down through the millenniums, those who were personified as cultures came about, they were personified as this cosmic event that took place and still takes place, because the stars and the sun has not changed its course. If it did, the Earth would not be here.
It'd be over.
Okay.
It would be over. That's so much. When I used to hear you and other greats on Michael Mixon Moore and Dr. Kwaku Person Lynn's African Mental Liberation Weekend, I just couldn't wrap my mind around a little of it, much less a lot of it, because it was just disheartening to know that this major trick on so many levels had taken place. But then once I just settled down and received it, it was really crystal clear, and but it's still prevalent today. Talk about how we had to be taken out of our name, culture, religion, and stripped from our God, because otherwise this couldn't have taken place.
Well, again, how do you make a people a slave? Okay? You have to strip a people of their culture, their mores and norms, and once you do that, and keep in mind that when Diago Diaz and Bua came down the west coast of Africa, and they built those slave dungeons that are still there in West Africa for the enslavement of African people, and named those ships the Good Jesus, the Grace of God, and the Holy Mary. So one has to even question that, right?
Wow.
That started it right there, right? The kidnapping of African people, and then, of course, we were kidnapped from Africa and brought over here and forced into slavery. And again, so when you see a people enslaved and you ask the people about culture, they can't tell you nothing about culture. They can only tell you about European holidays. And we still got a mental slave system still taking place. It's mental now. Before the plantation, we saw the chains were on our body. We saw those who were rebellious, who got diastasis Ethiopia, was called back during that time, runaway slave, or a slave who had diastasis Ethiopica, a defiant slave.
Just name a disease and drop it.
Right, so we would be considered on the airways right now. We would be considered, if we were back during the time of slavery, that you and I discussed thing, we would have a disease, diastasis Ethiopia.
Why does it kept?
We're defiant, okay? Because we're worshiping or participating in mass ritual and drunkenness of what's going on right now. So we see that folks are being sedated, right?
Yeah.
It's worse than the drug deal.
Yeah, and we're considered that right now, quiet as it's kept, Dr. Kwesi. Believe me, but we do it. We got to tell you.
Right. So, so it's a matter of, have to, again, the emancipation, the final emancipation of our mind.
Yes, sir.
So, again, it starts with education. So education for liberation, and that's when this time of the year, whether other holidays and so forth come up, we have to talk about, all these things. We come out into this time period in October, Christopher Columbus, and our children are celebrated. I mean, this is a matter, a rapist. That started the whole process of materialism and capitalism. They produced the process of being kidnapped when Bartholomew Diaz, who authorized us to be taken from the continent after killing off the indigenous people that they refer to so-called Indians.
That's right. They are not Indians.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's because he was looking for India. So he said he found India, and so the people were called Indians.
Right.
And there's been Indians since.
Yeah. But the way this decimated them and brought us here has been doing the same thing, and more need now because we've built a country, and it's like...
Right. So, I mean, here we are, they were still in the matrix of this whole process. So, again... when the Europeans came with their diseases and decimated population here, and many of our people were able to withstand these smallpox and syphilis things that Europeans had their system, even though many died from those diseases as well. But at the same time, the gun is what the main thing, from the Gatling gun and the cannon, didn't enable Europeans to do what they did to Africa and with mass destruction that brings it right on up to the hydrogen bombs that they go over the world.
Right. To go into, and we can back and forth. We have enough time, but I want to talk about the alternatives. And everyone, you go to finalcall.com. The story is there. And also Black Xmas 2 weeks ago that talks about the ethnic boycott. Certainly could go deeper into how many are praying to the white statues of Mary, G. and Joseph. But we have the Pope praying to the Black Madonna. But what I want you to do is let's talk about the alternative or an alternative, spiritual alternatives, like, for instance, Kwanzaa, or going with the call of the sister, to be the act of kindness. We can be the gift. It takes anything to be nice or to be trying to uplift somebody's spirits, whether it's feeding somebody or saying a kind word or letting a person have that parking spot, or not responding to them in time when you really have the right to lay somebody out, but you give them a pass, but being actually kind as people. But to dig into Kwanzaa, like Dr. Maulana Karenga and the organization US. So talk about that and the importance of that. You delve into it for the story.
Yes, well, again, we to pull ourselves together, we have to start to see culture from our own African-centered point of view, from our own spiritual space. We have to start seeing our own black divinity and our own black spirituality, and get out of white idolatry. Okay, as I said, that's the worst form of enslavement, which is spiritual enslavement, when the enemy becomes the deity in the spiritual subconscious of our mind. So Kwanzaa plays a major role, especially for our children. My children grew up with Kwanzaa. Again, when we look at the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, and all those principles are incorporated into pulling our community back together, or whether we're looking at Umoja, which is unity. That's the number one thing we need as a people, is unity. People can't come together if they don't have unity. Kuja Chagalia, we have to have self-determination. We have to start to put that in our children, to have self-determination from the time that they start going into elementary school, from the time they get high school, college, and also through life. We have to have self-determination to get through the system of racism and white supremacy. We have to have Ujima, collective work. When we look at our community, it takes a collective work and responsibility for us to pull our community together. We can't depend on others. When we see other people coming in, they're coming in, building business in the community. So that leads us right into Ujamaa, cooperative economics. We don't have cooperative economics, then we've got to expect other people coming from other places and coming to America and setting up business in their community, and then sending their children and their communities start to prosper, not in our community, but in communities that they build outside of our community, but they take the money out of our community. We have to have a purpose. We have to have Nia. What is our purpose? Is our purpose to be a slave forever in the system of racism and white supremacy in the matrix of America? No, that is not our purpose. Our purpose is a free people. That's our purpose. Okay, to find out in our individual purpose or why we are here. We all have something to do. We all have a piece. If I can use the analogy of a mirror, you can see your face, but if somebody knocks that mirror on the ground, it breaks up into many pieces. But one of us can't take one piece and say that we know it now. We know what our purpose is. It takes all of us to pick those pieces back up again to pull our purpose together. So that's the importance of Nia. That leads into Kaumba, or creativity. Creativity, that creativity is expressed in all cultures. You say Chinatown, you see Chinese people. You see Chinese architecture. You see the culture being expressed in their creativity as a culture, as a people. So that's important to understand, that we've got to pull our community together. We can't expect to come. How can we see a black community and we don't see that expressed in the creativity in our community? What do we see in our community? We see our culture being expressed from us as the people, or is it being expressed from other people? Then above all, we have to have imani, faith. Okay, faith in all of us, that we have to do what we have to do to always be free as a people, and have faith in each other, that we can pull our people together. So I think that these the 7 principles of Nguzo Saba, Dr. Maulana Karenga also brought together for this. This is very important, and it starts with embedding these early principles into our children at a very early age. Yeah. Their mind is like a sponge. They are the ones who will carry it on. And then a lot of us, who are adults who may be unfamiliar with Kwanzaa. Right. Some will start to take and pull Kwanzaa into their homes and start to celebrate Kwanzaa, but there are still others who will rebel because of the hatred that we were taught to hate Africa. How do you make a slave? Okay, you make a slave by making a slave hate themselves. And when a slave hates himself and hates his people, then of course the slave master doesn't have to do much. Yeah. We see that genocide is taking place in some cases among ourselves. We see the youth out there killing each other. Okay, that is expression of self-hatred. That's all the process of killing our black divinity, our own spiritual representation of who we are as a people. So everything that we look, okay, even in the religion of the Western version of European Christianity, everything next is black. You know, many cases, the devil is represented as black.
Yeah.
We're children. We're told a mother's cooking devil's food over an angel's food cake. Those things are still in the deep psychic of our mind as the children.
Wow. So when you bring them, and we wonder why, or are there wonder why we're at this 2019 where racism and the battle over light, dark skin is at an all-time high and very injurious. You know, but it's not without design. You're right, not without design. This is just the one thing we know that we can is continue to tell the truth. You know, you spoke about that plays out with our children, but the great abolitionist and author Frederick Douglass spoke about, right, and elaborate on it for us, Dr. Ashra, how during the holiday, from that holiday season, we were purposely kept in a drunk stupor. Masters.
Yeah, again, that's part of the process. Drunken state to keep a slave, that's why we got doors on every corner. So it's not even outside holiday, but especially plantation. That was a time period that, keep in mind, this was a time of a culture now. See, we're practicing a culture, a slave culture that took place on the slave plantation. So the slave master getting the slaves drunk during this time of the year, and he was able to drink as much liquor as he wanted, meaning the slave, as much liquor as he wanted or she wanted to drink during that time. So this is why, to this very day, that this is where all the liquor stores sell out, okay, their religion, because it has the same effect. You know, when you call it Christian Brothers, Blue Dun, and Paradise Wine, okay?
Wow.
So it kept us in a drunken state, and we still see that drunken state even to this day. A couple of years ago, there was a brother going down the street, and he had a pine tree on top of his car and almost hit me, his car with a pine tree, and he was drinking something. I don't know if it was Christian Brothers or Paradise Wine, but still we see that same plantation of yesterday is the same plantation of today.
Yeah, it's carried on.
It's part of the culture. It's part of the culture. So this is, in fact, the slave master would even tell the slaves that if you want, after he would get very drunk, and he would tell the slave that this is what freedom is like. So, of course,
wow.
So the slave had to question if he really wanted freedom when he was in this drunken, miserable state. He was already in a miserable state, but now he's in a drunken state in his mind during that time.
Wow. Killed the revolutionary spirit, killed the desire to run. This is just horrible. Dr. Kwesi, let's talk about, before we head out, Kemet New Black People's Productions. And so you have a tour coming up. This is African-centered lectures and tours to Egypt and Ethiopia that he and his wife, Mary Ra. I was thinking of Reverend Mary Kara over here at class.
Very, very good brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the first year I did not lecture on Christianity because we have our early trip to Ethiopia. We do Ethiopia in the winter.
Wow.
And Egypt in the summer. So this is now 39 years of my life.
Wow.
I haven't missed a year in 39 years. And
congratulations.
Thank you, Asante sister. My first trip to Egypt was in 1981 with Dr. Yakin, and we affectionately know as Dr. Ben. I spent 14 years apprenticeship under him. Yeah. When I first met him at Long State in 1973. And he gave a very powerful lecture talking on some of the things that we kind of spoke of today. I asked, can you prove that I can take you back and show you? So that became a dream. And
wonderful.
I made that with him in 81, did not know that I would spend now 39 years nonstop and now take hundreds of brothers and sisters back to the books. And
that is wonderful.
And so Kemet Nu literally means black people.
That's right.
Right. Is black and Nu is people, ancient Kemetic language of black people. We know thyself. Kemet Nu thyself.
Yeah.
So, our little part that we're doing is always say that if all of us just took 5%, like a man and woman in this country, we would be on our way to freedom. But they take 100% of our energy and activity. Yeah. And that's why, a lot of times it ends up on the shoulders too, trying to do the work.
Oh,
but we all have things, okay? It's an honor to be on your radio show.
Thank you.
An African community information for Liberated.
Yeah.
So we all have something.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is tap in that gene that's lying dormant in all of us. Okay. Liberated faith is, in some cases, is locked up self-hatred, Because as long as we have the self-hatred, then we unlock that gene within all of us.
Wow. I had a shock face because I literally just spoke some of those literally to an English class where I taught at a school. Today, I resigned, and the day on my last day, I was telling that. They're like, where you gotta go? I'm like, But I gotta ask you as we take off, could you talk about, because I heard 1981, and I'm like, that's the early rebuilding by Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan of the nation, which a part of that is what led me to learn about you and all of these different kinds of people. Talk about any influence or impact the minister, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, have had on your life and study.
Well, I can say that it definitely had a major impact on me, and I feel that or think that many of us who are out here doing information, delivering information for the liberation of people, that the Nation of Islam number one influence. I can go back to an early time period of hearing of the ministers speaking. In fact, I can say right now, second lecture I ever did was at Temple 27.
Oh,
in
West
Los
Point.
Angeles.
Oh, wow. Second lecture, good.
My first lecture was at the Black Knox Studies in Los Angeles. It was a black bookstore about Dr. Lagan, who are now our ancestors.
Yeah.
It was Brother Khalid.
I'll be pleased with them.
I did his son Marcus Garvey School, my daughter Marcus Garvey School. So
Wow.
third I went to and he invited me to lecture. At that time, the bus was up on Stalker, and he built Temple 27 right Crenshaw.
Yeah.
So periodically I would lecture there, but my lecture I ever did was to, at that time his name was Rashidin. And
That's right, Dr.
Minister
Khalid.
Burke, I named him Khalid Abdul Muhammad. So
Yeah.
it was a great influence on my life with Islam, so I would not know what I know. I thought it was more, Nation of Islam. In fact, it was in 1978 that I heard Dr. Khalid Muhammad lecture and on Crenshaw. He was lecturing on the Black Dot. And he spoke of Dr. Ben. And then I recalled I saw Dr. Ben at Long Beach State in 1970. So I knew that here's a man.
That's right.
Speaking of a man that inspired me, speaking of Dr. Ben. And so I knew that I was still on the right track.
That's right.
That current is still taken from the spirit of Dr. Ben and Dr. Collins and of him. So
wow. Well, thank you so much. We're going to leave it. I look forward to having you back, for being here your first time. And I put your information in the thread. Okay?
I'm sorry, what's that again?
Put your information in the thread, and so saying that's our time, and thank you for me, and I look forward to having you back.
It's a great honor. It's good. When you talk about these holidays, there was so much on my mind. I was going to talk about Zort's Peak, and they got the servants of Santa Claus and the blackface. I was going to talk about those things. When you get into this topic,
that's right.
Go into it.
That's right, and we can get back. We're in the season, so we would like to do at any time, because these holidays are not Christmas time; they run the complete year. How about that?
Well, yeah, you got them coming up, and that's Easter, so that's a whole topic.
Yeah, come back. Let's talk about that. Dr. Lee, thank you so much in travels. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mother. It's an honor to be on your show. Look forward to it.
Praise be to Allah. Alaikum salam. Thank you so much, Dr. Kwesi. Again, thank you for Alicia the Port. It's MorrisFinal.com for the stories we talked about. Thank you so much, Attorney Nana Jumphrey, for donating. Oh, my God. Thank you for supporting Liberal Sisters with your time. I love you so much. I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad, saying if it's impacting our community or can uplift us as a people, let's talk about it. Peace.